All right, what's good, y'all? It's your boy Emanuele with my boy Air Hudson on the other side.
Yup.
Let's get uncomfortable. Join us as we uncover our potential through authentic conversations about modern life. And you know how we get this shit popping.
Okay,
Straight out
the
the bottle.
slogan. I like it.
I
Starting it
got
with the
some
slogan.
Four Roses bourbon.
Wait, what do you have?
Four Roses. It's my go-to.
Okay, I don't know if I ever had that, bro. But you know me, I'm classic. Woodford Reserve.
You're still sipping on that.
Let's go.
I'm down. Oh, you're going out.
Hold on, bro. Cheers.
I'm
Hold
going
on, bro.
out the bottle.
Cheers. All I'm pouring in the cup today.
Let's go.
Cheers, bro.
I'm down. Whew.
Ooh, that was a little big. I think I did a double there. I'm down.
I agree.
Woo. All right, bro. Let's get uncomfortable.
So let me see. What's our first?
Bro, I got this.
You got it.
I was actually thinking about this one because I think we should talk about this one first. I was thinking about this one while I was watching the Jags get wrecked. One of the conversations we wanted to talk about was retraining our minds in adulthood, how to move on from your past and hone in on your future. I thought this was a really interesting topic when we first brought it up last weekend.
Yeah.
I think it's something we both can relate to a lot. For the listeners, I think you and I, we both have really different childhoods, but there's also a lot of similarities. Obviously, we grew up in two completely different places. Midwest, West Coast are just different universes. We both grew up in hyper-religious families. We both grew up in families that didn't have the most money. But we also had really different environments. So I was really curious to hear about what you thought about this, because I think our answers are going to kind of reflect our differences and also our similarities. But what do you think? What do you think about retraining your mind in adulthood? And what do you think are the keys to moving on from the past and making sure your mind's in the right place to work toward the future?
Therapy. I don't know how many times I have to tell you.
Okay, damn. Right to it.
Wow. No, but what do you mean? Or like when you say like retraining your mind, is it like based off like what you learned in childhood, or like what exactly do you mean by that?
So I think there's two sides to this, right? One
like,
is
like traumas, or like how you were taught to do things and retraining to like not do that, or learn what helped you and maybe what wasn't helping you, like that.
I mean, anytime you're talking about the past, trauma is always going to play a large part in that, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
We partly learn from trauma, and we create defense mechanisms that affect our ability to interact with people, create relationships, things like that, but also affects our habits. So I think trauma is always going to play a part in this. I think another side to it is when you're a kid, you're absorbing all the information around you, and the majority of that time is spent around your family and your parents specifically, and you're learning from them. I think also your childhood friends, like the relationships you have when you're younger, you learn things from people, right? Role models, friends, family. And when you're a kid, it's really hard, or even when you're in high school, man, it's really hard to decipher what is a healthy habit that you're learning and what's unhealthy, right? I think when I started living alone, it's really started to hit me. Like, I think when I started to be completely on my own when I was like 19 and I had no idea what I was doing with my life, I think I started to realize that certain things from my past weren't right for me, and I had to retrain my mind, and I had to find ways to work through them so that I could focus on things that mattered more to me in my life. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, no, that helps. I just feel like the reason I asked that is because I feel like it's a very heavy question and also very heavy answer. I don't mean that just in like terms of like emotional, but I also mean that in like I could go on for quite a while on the question, on the answer. So I didn't want to like rant for 45 minutes. I just wanted to like hone in on exactly what you like we're looking for. But
I actually find it really interesting that you thought it was a dark topic.
No, bro.
No, but I want to hear your side of it. I want to hear your side, and I'm really curious about what you have to say about this. And if you need to spend 45 minutes, spend 45 minutes. This could be the only thing we talk about today if we have to.
I don't think it's a dark question. I think it's a very like deep question where you could like continue or keep going down that road for quite a while. Like you could say a lot of different things about it. Anyways, I don't want to keep, not answering or getting into it. So I'll just go with what pops into my head. So retraining my mind for adulthood. and how to move on from my past, or like and hone in on the future. I think the biggest thing for me is to, and I'm not perfect at this, I'm still working on it. Um, Disconnecting, or like, you can't blame your past anymore. Like I used to always be like, oh, I'm here because of my past, or I didn't have this, or I didn't have that. And so I always kind of like blamed my past. Um, but because of that, I feel like it holds you back and holds you into the past, so you can't even like move into the future, if that makes sense. So I almost feel like I've been reading like a book, uh, and it's kind of just like about living in the present, living in the moment. It was actually one of my 2023 goals, just to enjoy something as simple as just enjoying the moment in the present, rather than being in my head about the future, or thinking about the past or whatever. I feel like I struggle a lot with being in the present, the here and now. Um, and I'm always either future or past. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing is just detaching from the past and realizing where you want to get to in the future is actually now, because like you're creating the future right now in this moment. And so that definitely has helped me a lot. And then also like what you mentioned, where you were 19, you didn't realize, what you were doing, where you wanted to go, and that's kind of the starting point, I would say, for where you're like kind of more so on your own. It's not your parents, uh I don't want to say pushing things on you, but like, believing things, or telling, you're kind of like in an echo chamber, when you're growing up. This goes this way, you believe this, this is right, this is wrong. um and varies to different degrees based off like if your household is super religious or not religious. Anyways, so you kind of finally get to think for yourself. Um and yeah, so kind of just asking yourself what still serves you and what doesn't serve you anymore. And I feel like even just one of those questions, or focusing on one thing that serves you or doesn't serve you, it's not like a quick yes or no answer, move on to the next one. I feel like even just one of those can take months, if not years, to like fully process and realize, or maybe change it, or completely abandon it, or maybe it serves you really well that I don't know, you somehow focus on it more. But regardless, um, yeah, just kind of taking inventory, I would say, of your habits, your thoughts, and where a big thing that I do is I always wonder where things come from. Like if I have a certain thought, if I do things a certain way, I'll ask myself, why do I do it this way? Why do I think this way? Where does this come from? Like, does it come from the church that we grew up in? Does it come from my mom? Does it come from maybe when I was like bullied, or some, I don't know, something in school? Or does it actually genuinely me? Um, and so more times than not, it stems from like something that's not me, and that's kind of how I can figure out if it's authentic or not. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, I would say, me in a nutshell. But what about you out in Seattle?
Um, I really like what you said about. Well, there's a few things I really like that you said. One was the aspect of um, kind of figuring out what's actually from you and what's from other people, right? Like
Yeah,
what's genuine to you. I think that's like a huge step. That's a really big thing, I think. Something I was thinking about was there's this aspect of, and I think you can probably relate to this a lot, is I think when people think about their past, a big emotion that comes up is guilt. Guilt, or like even something like blaming yourself, right? I think you talked about that too, where it's like, oh, this is my fault. Um, and I think a big thing for me is when I first started like my adult life on my own, I think a lot of things I was trying to move on from was the idea of like things in the past that are currently affecting me, and whether or not they're my fault. Like, why am I in the position I'm in right now? How much of this is my fault? How much is my
ooh,
family's fault? How much of this is um like I think, I grew up in a situation where my family didn't have like a lot of money, and I think a lot of times I would be like, oh, this is because of that, right? And I would always try to come up with ways to like overcome those things. Um, but I think being able to let go and kind of like forgive has been like a really big step for me, where I feel like I've been able to kind of be like, okay, my past is my past, and there's a lot of things that have been holding me back, and I need to kind of like let go of that. And I think everyone in my life, I don't know how you feel about this, but everyone in my life, I feel like whether or not things were for the best, everybody had good intentions. So like my family, my friends, my role models growing up, I think like objectively, some people might say, oh, these people weren't always the best people for you. But I think that everybody had a good heart behind it. So I think when I'm looking at my past and I'm like, when I was first an adult, I was like, man, there's like a lot of tough things happening that I didn't feel prepared for. So, for example, like financially, I didn't really know what it took to do the things that I was trying to do. Like, for example, going to university and getting a good degree and getting good grades. A lot of people think that's just work ethic, but a huge part of that is like having money and like being able to afford college, being able to afford rent, food, all these things. And I didn't have like a family or anyone else to like back me up on those things, right? And I could easily like blame my family for that because a lot of my friends' college and their food and everything was paid for by their parents. But another way of approaching that is like, okay, maybe my parents weren't the most set up financially, but that doesn't mean that I can't come up with my own solutions, which I did, and I paid for college on my own. And I think like some people would just sit there and like complain and be like, "Oh, this is these people's fault," and they wouldn't like take responsibility for what they need to do to move forward. But I think what I was able to do was kind of say, "Okay, unfortunately, I'm in a situation where I have to do this all on my own, but I'm gonna like take steps and move forward rather than like sit here and complain." Because some people would. Some people might be like, "Well, I can't go to college. I can't do this. I don't have the money for it. I don't have whatever I need to be successful. So I'm just not going to pursue it. And it's not my fault. That's other people's fault that's in my life." Um, but yeah, I think like being able to like forgive, or maybe not forgive, but like accept and just be like, you know what? I need to focus on what I can do to get where I want. I think that's like a huge part. Sort of just like letting go. I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but sort of just letting go of the past and being like, whatever happened, happened. And now I need to like find out what I want from life and find ways to get there regardless of my past. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
no, yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I think letting go is definitely a big key thing. But the thing is, letting go is a lot easier said than done. Even if you are like ready to let it go, it's still easier said than done, if that makes sense. Um, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I relate to a lot of things that you said, like and actually the guilt part. Like when it comes to when I say I never felt guilt, um, I'm talking about like my childhood or like growing up. But then I realized after you said guilt, it's like, oh, I do feel like guilty, or like you said, like, oh, I don't have. I forgot what you said. Something about like you not having money, or like growing up. We both came from like pretty low income families, so it's just like feeling like I would always tie it like if I'm not where I want to be, or like you didn't have money for college, you feel guilty with your family or your parents. And I thought like I just had anger and resentment, but I do feel there's actually guilt there. Like I didn't realize it until you said that. Um, but yeah, I do agree, and I used to think like a lot of this stuff set us back. Um, but now that I look at it as like adults, I think it actually like gives us to some degree an advantage. Maybe not like physically or monetarily, but I do think like mentally, I'm not gonna say emotionally, at least mentally, it gives us, I think, a head start because we're able to solve these problems and figure things out for ourselves. Whereas someone who's spoon fed or has a silver spoon in their mouth, or daddy's money, like they're always easily bailed out. So when adversity does hit them, no matter how small, like you said, they'll just sit there and pout and blame their past per se. Whereas we're used to like digging ourselves out of our own holes, or holes that we were like set up in. So whenever a hole or a setback in life hits us, we have the tools, the confidence, and the wisdom to get ourselves back out of there, and if not back on track, even like further ahead down the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah, bro, I love that you brought this up actually. I love that you brought that up because that's actually something I struggle with sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think more often than not, I come to the conclusion about what you were saying, where I'm like, you know what, this is actually an advantage to me. And I don't think it shows up immediately, because what
Yeah,
happens is, like, over time, eventually these things are going to become like they're going to take form and show up in other ways, right? So like I feel like because of my past, I'm a bit more resilient
yeah,
and I'm able to overcome things. And I think that that plays a large advantage over time. I think initially, obviously, your starting point isn't the greatest, but I think that over time, so like 10 years from now, I wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised if you and I are like, oh my God, like the way we grew up, like changed our lives completely in the future for good, like for good reason. Um, but I think initially that's the thing I struggle with, because sometimes I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, okay, like if I grew up in a family with a lot of money that like really took education seriously, like how much further would I have gotten so much quicker, right? Where like I wouldn't have to spend all this time. I mean, like for example, like when I was in university, I spent so much time trying to make money and I was so stressed about money all the time. And also I was figuring out school. Like in high school, it's completely different than university. I didn't have like family members showing me like how to navigate that system, right? Like
yeah,
going to university and going to high school are two completely different things, especially like a really competitive university like the University of Washington. Like when I first got there, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like these students just seemed like above and beyond. They were just like incredible. And I felt out of place. Obviously, it paid off in the long run. And by the time I graduated, I did really well. I had a 3.8 and I was like really proud of myself. But sometimes I'm like, man, I can't even imagine how much better school would have gone if one, like my family members were really invested and like cared a lot about education. Um, like my parents didn't really care about my grades growing up. I don't know about you, but like I don't even know if my parents checked my report card. Like it wasn't a
yeah,
thing for them. Um, and they never really like taught me how to study or like taught me like healthy habits towards getting good grades or things like that. And then obviously financially, I spent so much time stressed about that and working to pay for school. So sometimes I'm like, man, I would have been so much further ahead, so much quicker if things were a little bit different. But then at the same time, I feel like I learned so much from my experience that now it's paying massive dividends to me. And I think that like as time goes by, that's only going to become like more and more clear. Because I think every year that goes by, I'm just like, oh my God, like the things I've learned on my own, like just fighting through life, have like played such a big advantage in my life recently, especially like the past 3 years. Like the way my life has just like accelerated upward for the past 3 years. I feel like a huge part of that is like related to work ethic and resiliency. Um, so I definitely agree with that point where it's just like when you look at things on like a really like a surface or like shallow level, it seems like a disadvantage. But I think when you really look at things deeply, um, I think that like our past plays such a big part in like how we develop our lives, and I think that it's overall going to have like a really positive impact.
yeah. I think it just takes time. Like it compounds over time, and like the same thing as like say like investing, just for an easy example, it's just like it takes time to see your money turn into like a decent chunk of money, like years, like decades. So it's like at first we didn't have much in there and we're not seeing much result and we're like, what the fuck, we're behind. But as it compounds, as the years go by, we just like uncover and realize more and more that like this was actually low-key a blessing and like kind of set us up for life. Um so I mean, there's definitely reasons to be grateful there. But I do think that there's a lot of similarity because when you said that you felt like out of place and that your parents like didn't put any focus on education or anything outside of religion, um, that was definitely my case. And like I always felt like, not felt like, I basically had to like figure things out or kind of learn things on my own growing up,
Hmm.
basically like completely. Um, and that's what I was always resentful about, not necessarily because of like I had to do it, but because I feel like it set me back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or like, at least, people usually have like a parent figure or a coach or something that's there to like guide them and kind of at least show them the path or trailblaze it for them. But when you're trailblazing it, it like takes you a little bit longer. So I always felt like, yeah, when I was like 24, I'm actually like figuring out what a normal 18-year-old would figure out, if that makes sense. So I
Right.
always felt like a few years behind of my actual age. Um, and that always made me feel resentful because I felt behind everyone else, if that makes sense. And I was always trying to play like catch up with everyone else. And I feel like that's why I struggled a lot with like anger and resentment. Um, I still do slightly, but nowhere near what I used to. Um, and again, back to the point of letting go. I've done that, and I'm for the most part out of the woods and like accepting of the past and whatnot. But definitely not perfect, and I mean no one's perfect. But yeah, so I definitely like made that similarity between you and I feel like honestly, anyone who grew up in the church with us, I feel like there's a lot of those similarities where it's just like there's just so much pressure on religion, and that's the main focus. Everything else is secondary. That even just paying the bills is secondary. You know what I mean? So I feel like we are probably not the only people that we know of that feel this, we're behind, or, what I mean, we're out of place, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that definitely helps out, because a lot of times I think to myself and I'm like, I'm the only one who feels this way. I'm the only one in this situation. When in reality, it's not. And it doesn't have to just be about the church. It can be about anything in life. I almost guarantee that you're not the only one that feels that way. There's other people, and in that way, you can give yourself a little bit of grace, and that's definitely helped me out a little bit. But
all right, bro. Okay, we've talked enough about the past and accepting things.
Bro, is it getting too deep, too dark?
No, not at all. I just think we need to focus. I really want to talk about like the future, because that's something we talk about all the time.
No, you're
like,
right.
For the listeners, right. Manny and I, we probably call each other like 4 times a week, bro, or like more, and we talk for like an hour or two on the phone.
Possibly
like 3 or 4
more.
Yeah. So we talk all the time, and I feel like a big thing with us is like goals, like what we want to accomplish. We're always talking about this kind of stuff. So I'm really curious what you have to say, because I think you and I, our minds work a little bit differently. Where like you're really good at like action steps, and like you have these like well planned out ways of like getting to your goals, and I'm a bit more like, you could probably describe me better, but I feel like I'm kind of like this brute force like energy person, where I'm just like, oh, I just got to go get it, and I don't really have like a plan all the time, but I'm just like have positivity and like optimism and hard work, but I don't always have like the best like action steps like you do. But okay, a topic we were going to talk about is how to advance with your goals and ideas using action steps to create a concrete path forward. Actually, could we use the podcast as like an example of this? Because I'm really curious, because I know you came up with the idea first about doing this podcast, and then how did you put all this into fruition? Because on my end, it's more of just like a phone call, and I was like, yeah, I'm down. Like, let's do a podcast because you asked me. But I feel like there was a lot more steps behind it, and I feel like you were the one who had to do that in the beginning. So I'm really curious if you could use that as like an example.
Yeah, and honestly, it ties pretty nicely from what we just talked about for the reason for the podcast. So basically, just like I've always wanted to do a podcast for quite a while. I'm talking about like possibly years, but I was always kind of too afraid to put myself out there per se. But I guess I kind of just like it was always nagging at me, and I don't think it was necessarily a podcast. It wasn't like I want to do a podcast that was nagging at me. It was more so nagging at me like being my authentic self, just putting myself out there, like sharing my story, not just to share my story, but more so just to like, I've always wanted to like inspire people and kind of be the trailblazer that I never had in my life. So I've always wanted to just, I feel like that was like the main thing for me. So yeah, I don't know exactly. I think November or December, so like 2 or 3 months ago, that's kind of when I more so actually started like thinking of a name, or I think it more so just came to me, that Davies song that we were playing before we started. I was listening to that song, and I don't know, for whatever reason, when he said like never get too comfortable, I resonated with it, because I feel like I've never felt completely comfortable in my life, and I've always never been too comfortable. But how we just talked about that gives you an advantage as you go on down the road in life. I saw that it like made sense, and it's actually a positive thing to never ever get too comfortable. If you're completely comfortable, then you're probably not chasing your goals. You're probably just complacent. And I never wanted to be complacent. So, like, I'm not saying don't enjoy life, just never get too comfortable. Is basically what I'm saying, and always be kind of pursuing something. So in a quick, like, just gist, that's kind of how I came up with the podcast and whatnot. And that, I mean, we were talking on the phone, and honestly, it happened pretty quickly. And I feel like when things are meant to happen, that's kind of how it goes down. It just happened quickly, and you popped on. Um, Glad you're here also, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, to be honest with you, I don't know if I could have done it without you. Like, of just doing it by myself, like, I don't know, you definitely, and that's why we like synergize so well, is because you help me, like, maybe where I struggle or my weaknesses, and I know, or tell me if I'm wrong. I know I feel the gaps for your weaknesses and whatnot. So, I definitely do really appreciate you doing this with me, because that definitely kind of gave me that last little nudge I needed, to get it popping. So,
For sure, bro. It's all love.
you, bro, and to
I
never
love
get
being
too
on here,
comfortable.
man. I love being on here. It's been really fun so far. I feel like we spend so much time talking to each other. It feels really natural to just be talking to each other here anyways. It makes no difference.
And
Okay,
that's,
but
and that's
really
another
quick.
thing, real quick. Sorry, 30 seconds. And also, just like with our phone conversations, I was like, dude, we have like such dope, inspiring phone conversations. Like when we get off the phone, we're talking hour and a half, and it feels like 20 minutes, not even. And I leave it like super inspired. Like I learn shit. Like I created my goals, and I feel more concrete in them to move forward. So I was like, okay, if I feel this way, Hudson probably feels this way. Like, why not just have this conversation, but share it? Maybe with a little bit more structure than our conversations on the phone. But I just thought it was a great way to inspire people. So, anyways, I just want to pop that in there. Thank you.
Love it. Okay, but bro, you didn't even answer my question. Hold up. We were talking about.
You, bro.
No, you answered my question partly. You answered the part about the podcast, but we were also talking about goals, bro, and steps. But real quick, I can get into that because I was part of that process in like the second half. We're like, okay, bro, let's be real for a sec. You and I, when we talk on the phone, we have so many ideas all the fucking time. Like, I don't know what is going on when we talk on the phone, but we're just popping out random ass ideas all the time. We're like, bro, that sounds so good. And we're like, but there's no like actual concrete thing behind it. It's just this really fun idea we have that we like talking about, and we never actually do it. Like, we have all these crazy ideas all the time. But the weird thing about this podcast is that you told me about it, and we actually did it, and it took like a couple weeks, I think. Like, it was like that. It was so quick. And I think the main difference was that we just started like setting really quick benchmarks. Because I think you called me and you're like, bro, you want to do a podcast with me? I was like, I fucking will. Let's do this. and then it was like, I was like, yo, I'm gonna buy a fucking mic right now. And you're like, bro, I already bought a mic. Let me send you the link. You won't buy it right now. And I was like, I will. And then I did. So I bought this mic like right here on Amazon, like the night you asked me to do the podcast with you. And then I think maybe like a few days later, we did like a video call with each other, and you started like making art for this, like all these dope logos and stuff. Manny just made like off the top of his head real quick. And there was a huge brainstorming session we had. I think it was like 4 hours where we like did all the designs. It took a while to do everything. It was like the background, the logo. We went through a few logos, and you made them super quick, and they were so professional. But we started taking like real steps, and I think that's a big key here. Is like, once we came up with the idea, we needed to move really quickly to make sure it went from an idea to like a thing of actual substance, right? Like, so many people have great ideas all the time, but you have to take like really concrete steps. And I think the quicker, the better. You have to take really concrete steps that like move you forward towards that goal. So our initial goal was like to actually just have a podcast. We didn't really know about what the content would necessarily be, and we didn't know like how everything was going to fit together, but we wanted to like take steps towards that. So one of the first things we did was we both bought mics the night you asked me. Then I bought a webcam. A week later, we had the goal of making a logo. And not only did we make a logo, we made this dope background too. We picked a hosting site so that we could like do our podcast live together. And I think we've just been making goals every step of the way. And I think after we had everything done, we literally said 1 week from now, we're doing our first pod. So it was like a 2-week thing where like you asked me to do the pod with you. 1 week later, I had a mic and a webcam, and then we had a logo and a background. And then 1 week later, we did our pod. So it came together really quick. And I think the thing that really mattered was that we were both inspired to do it, but also we were willing to like take concrete steps and like make sacrifices. So we like took time out of our day to actually do these things. Like that brainstorming session we had, that was like 4 hours. That's a lot of time, man. You and I both work a lot. Like that's a lot of time. And then on top of that, we obviously invested our money. Like I bought things. But I think as far as like those goals of like creating a concrete path forward, I think that's huge. Is like creating like, whether it's weekly or daily, I think creating like segments is like really important, where like once you have a goal being like, oh, by this week or like this day, I need this done. And like creating that process creates like a trail for you to follow. So I think that's one of the reasons this came together so quick. And that kind of relates to what we were talking about with goals. Is like, we put things together, but we weren't just like mindlessly doing this. We had like actual steps we were doing together the entire way before our first episode actually started.
See, but that's why it works out so well, because it's a combination of like the way you and I do things. To recap, you said you're kind of like, you have a goal, you don't really do action steps, you just fucking do it. You start blazing the trail. You don't know where you're going, but you're just going for it, and that's commendable. That's dope. But again, there's pros and cons to that. On my end of it, I'm more so just like, okay, I gotta like figure out how I'm gonna get there. I gotta strategize it. Gotta have some goals, and that's dope because at least you have a roadmap. But my fault is I tend to be a perfectionist, and a lot of times I tend to over strategize or whatever, and I get like analysis paralysis. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
Where it's just like I'm so bogged down in the details that I never even fucking start. And so it's just like, now that, you know, we have your style and my style, we take the best of the both worlds right there, and we have action steps, but then we're just fucking doing it. You know what I mean? And that's how things come about. So, yeah, so I think that's fucking dope. And that we're able to combine our two ways of styles. And like, I can give you a little bit of direction and you can give me a little bit of fuel in the tank, just to be like, it doesn't have to be perfect, just get it fucking going. You know what I mean? So
Let's
I think
do it. That's what I do. Let's do it. Let's get hype.
Let's get fucking hype. Let's go. Come
Let's
on,
go.
let's pop bottles again real quick.
Bro, like my fourth shot. God damn.
Bro, I've only seen, this is the second time I'm gonna see you do it.
Nah, bro, I pulled one in earlier.
I'm down. Okay.
Okay, hold on. I want to come up with like, okay, so we came up with like the concrete steps and everything like that. There's a few more ideas I had. I remember I thought about this in the shower the other day. Something I thought about when we were talking about this was, one, what we already just talked about earlier, which was like letting go of things, right? Acceptance, forgiveness, letting go. I think that's the first step, right? I think we can both agree on that that's like a big step, is like that whole like emotional side of things, where you're letting go, accepting, and forgiving. I think that's like an initial great step towards moving forward. I think the second thing is what we just talked about, which is the action steps, right? Like having like benchmarks that you can follow that you need to have done by a certain time. That's great for goals. Another thing was just like, I think consistency obviously matters, right? So consistency is a big thing.
Bro, absolutely.
Yeah.
That might be the only thing that maybe is up there with it is discipline, but like consistency, that's a big thing.
I think they go along. I think they're hand in hand. I think those two things go along really well together. And I think when you're consistent and you're disciplined, you create healthy habits, right? Like you're creating healthy habits towards a goal. I think that's really important. That's something that goes along with what I was talking about with like growing up, like becoming an adult. A huge part of it was like, I didn't have like healthy habits. Like I didn't know, like when I was like 19 and I was just trying to like get by in life, I didn't really know what I was doing as far as like my habits. And there was all these things I had to let go of that I learned from like family and friends and things like that. And I had to like create new habits, right? So like now I'm way more disciplined, like for when I wake up. I'm way more disciplined for like what I eat and how I prepare during the week. Like I buy all my groceries on Sunday and I do my meal preps, and I would try to wake up early and I go to the gym at a certain time. But like I have to learn how to do those things. I didn't know how to do those things. Then like at work, like there's all these habits for like getting your work done in a timely manner that I didn't like really know about. Like I wasn't the most organized person. So I had to learn like all these new healthy habits. And I think consistency and discipline, which we just mentioned, I think those are two really important things for creating those habits. I think, anybody can do something for one day. Like you can feel really inspired for a goal and wake up the next day. Like if you're like, for New Year's, you're like, oh, I'm trying to get buff. I think it's really easy to wake up January 2nd and go to the gym in the morning. I think it's really easy to do that the first time. But the hard thing is doing that every day for months and then years, right? So creating those habits through discipline and through consistency, I think is like a really important thing. And another thing I was thinking about, bro, is you can't be a bitch. Like,
bro,
I was thinking about this. Like, I'm not the biggest, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, I'm not the biggest, like, oh, no matter what, you can just do everything on your own. But I do believe in those things to a certain degree. And I think when I say, like, you can't be a bitch, like, don't be a bitch, I don't mean it in, like, a bro way. I don't mean it in, like, a toxic masculinity way. What I really mean is, like, when small things don't work out your way, along with the consistency and discipline we were talking about, like, you got to just show up and still do it. Like, oh, you had a really tough day at work and you don't want to go to the gym afterwards. Guess what? You still have to. Like, I think you have to have some backbone, bro. Like, that's something that developed over time that I've really noticed. Like, there's been so many times where I just didn't want to do something. And I was like, damn, like, I have to. Like, this is really going to set me back if I don't do this. I think the biggest thing was when I was at university. I mean, you remember, man, like, I was in the library till like 1 a.m. every day. I was just grinding, waking up, studying all day, every day. And I think a huge thing for me is there's just so many days where, like, I don't want to go to class today, or like tough things would happen with my family, or like my finances, like really tough things would show up, relationships. And I was like, damn, I don't want to go to school right now, or I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this assignment. Whatever it was, like, I knew I could have just settled and gotten like a B in a class instead if I just gave like 80%. But it was always like, okay, I'm paying for my education. Like, I've done all this on my own. I'm living on my own. Like, I'm paying for school. Like, I have to show up and I have to actually do this. Like, if I want to be successful in my life and move on from my past, like, I have to do these things. And I think a huge part for me in like being where I am now and moving forward is like developing that backbone and like that resiliency and being like, no matter what happens during my day, no matter what happens during my week, I got to show up and get work done. I think that's what I mean when I say you can't be a bitch, bro. Like, no matter what your circumstances are, you got to show up and still put in the work. I think that's a big thing for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely like everyone has the inner bitch. And you always have to just like show it who's like alpha or who's the boss. And it's not toxic masculinity. Everyone has it. You can call it laziness. That's literally what it is. Like, don't be a bitch is literally just be like, don't be lazy. It's another way to say that. So just like, and everyone has it. Like at the gym, like there's times where it's like I go through my workout and I was like, okay, I had a good workout. Like, I don't need to run on the treadmill, or I don't need to do abs today. Like, I just had a good workout. Like, let's just leave. And I'm not gonna lie, there's times where my inner bitch gets me and I leave. But I try more times than not to be like, no, fuck you. And a lot of times what I say is like, okay, now that you said some shit, I'm gonna do it like longer, or I'm gonna have to do more rigorous to kind of like try to teach that voice to be like, okay, if you say anything, I'm just gonna make it harder for myself. So, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and it's no one in the world, even the hardest motherfucker on the planet, is not like, maybe David Goggins, he's different, but no one's like 100% like got their inner bitch tamed. It's always gonna win every now and again. You just want to make sure that you are winning more times than it's winning, if that makes sense. Because like I realized that I was like, whenever say I would lose that battle, I'd be like, wow, I'm such a bitch. I'd just destroy myself, because I'm like, everyone else doesn't lose to this voice. Why are you? You're such a pussy. Da da da. And so, yeah, I definitely say give yourself some grace with that. Don't be a bitch, but also give yourself a little bit of grace. And where I was gonna go with this, I had a point. Anyways, yeah, I would just say, just as long as you're more times than not overcoming that voice, I would just say give yourself a little bit of grace. And then, that's where I was going. Even with the consistency thing, with giving yourself some grace, no one can be completely consistent like day in and day out. There's days where things are going to come up, like you said, with family issues, with work issues, you get sick, your dog dies, whatever it may be. There's times where you're going to get a nice gut punch and it's going to maybe set you back, but you just got to be able to give yourself grace. And then I know, like, if it's nothing too crazy, just don't miss more than a day. Like, I'll be real with you, I missed a day at the gym today, or this week, and like in the book Atomic Habits, it's like, as long as you don't miss a day or 2 days in a row, you're fine. And so just a way of giving yourself grace, because I used to, like, if I missed a day again, I would corrode myself and all day just be like, you're such a bitch, da 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 da. Just go down the rabbit hole all day. Just, I would never be that mean to you or to anyone else in life. So why am I so rude and belittling to myself? So another thing I'm working on is my inner voice. So anyways, just to like package that up, I'll just say give yourself a little bit of grace, but definitely, yeah, tame that inner bitch.
Yeah, I think we all lose sometimes, right?
Like, absolutely.
Everybody has things where they mess up and they didn't pull through, things like that. But I think part of what I meant when it's like, don't be a bitch, is like, we all lose and we know that, but you can't just like, don't lose again because you lost. Like sometimes we get so down on ourselves that we stop focusing on our goals and we kind of give up. Like everybody loses sometimes and we fuck up sometimes. But I think the biggest thing is like, can you be resilient past that and not let it become like a consistent thing? Because like you said, there's just going to be days where you don't come through with it. But I really like the idea of like no 2 days in a row, right? Like, okay, I lost today. Today I didn't do it, but tomorrow I have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's like a really big key thing is, even people who you think are perfect, they all mess up. Everybody messes up. But can you move forward from that loss and start getting some dubs? Another thing I was thinking about, man, is like a huge thing that goes along with all this and like getting towards your goals is opportunity. Like being ready for opportunity. Like I think sometimes things in life like just kind of happen and you have to be ready. I was thinking about this because while you were talking about, I was thinking about like my new job. So like I used to work at I've been working in psychiatry, inpatient psychiatry, for 3 years now. And I was working at a really toxic hospital for like 2 years. And I never really wanted to switch jobs, but like a part of me was like, okay, I think I have to soon. Like this place doesn't pay me as much as I'm worth. The environment's a bit toxic. I really loved my patients though. And a big thing was I was worried about like not having that same experience. And not having like an environment where I could give my patients like 100%, which I could do at the hospital. But I think like 2 months before I got my new job, I started thinking like, yo, I think I need a new opportunity. Like I need to move on. I want to do bigger things. I want to do better financially. And I started like thinking about that. And I started like changing my resume, and I didn't like apply to other places yet. But then my girlfriend at the time randomly sent me a link to a job offering at OHSU, which is like the biggest hospital in Oregon. It's the #1 hospital. Working there is like an incredible opportunity. And I saw this thing and I was just like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I've been looking for. And it's funny because like 2 months before that, I just put out the idea like, okay, like I didn't actually have a solid date, which I probably should have, but I had this idea where I was like, okay, pretty soon I want to like move on and I want to find a really great job that gives me the same opportunities, but it's like a better work environment for me and pays me better. And then 2 months later, I had taken steps during that time where I updated my resume, and the opportunity kind of came out of nowhere where I just randomly, my girlfriend sent me this and I applied and I got the job. And it was like this incredible thing. But I think like another thing that plays a part in the idea of like goals and stuff is being ready for opportunity. And so that whenever things do come up, even if they're a surprise, you're like ready to take full advantage of it. I don't know if that's something you relate to at all, but that's just something that crossed my mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they always say what they say. Success is when opportunity meets preparation. Something like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a rap line. I can't remember what song or what rapper it's from. Anyways, but yeah, that's basically what it is. So I mean, as long as you're preparing or putting in the work, that opportunity, you just have to be ready for that opportunity to show up at any time, and you have to be able to seize the opportunity. You know what I mean? A lot of people choke in that opportunity. Trevor Lawrence, I'm looking at you.
Oh no, bro! I gotta check on my phone real quick how many interceptions he has now. It was 4.5.
But I mean, yeah, see, like the preparation was there. For example, I mean, okay, I don't want to bag on him. Anyways,
yeah, we're just playing. We love you, Trevor. Oh my God, bro, they're coming back.
What's the score?
It's 30-20 right now.
Holy shit!
Trevor, bro, he has 3 TDs now. He's thrown 3 TDs out of nowhere.
Yo, okay, Trevor just made me eat my words. I'm gonna take all of that back. That shit.
So no interceptions in the second half so far.
Oh, wow. Jesus. Anyway, yeah. Anyways, sorry, Trevor. I didn't mean to throw your shit at you like that. Yeah, just you have to be ready for your opportunity, and as long as you're putting in that work and that time, you just have to be patient and just know that that opportunity is going to come to you sooner or later. I definitely have realized a lot of like the past, especially the past like year or two since I've been in Dallas. I realized a lot of things that's like when I want something or when I need something, like when I want to elevate, it usually manifests within a few months. And so
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm able to like just chill as much as I can. Um, but because I'm putting in the work and the effort and all that stuff, like the things that and a lot of times it's things that whether I want or need, are even better than like what I want or need. And it just like really sets me up for the future and even puts me like years ahead. So that's definitely helped me out with like anxiety. Because I've just always been like impatient. Because I'm like, I'm putting in the work, but it's like sometimes you just gotta be patient and just know that the opportunity is coming. I do practice what I preach, but I do also sometimes just have too much anxiety, and I'm kind of always freaking out because I always want to like, I'm always thinking like 10 steps ahead. But yeah, definitely to your point.
I was actually, first of all, I just want to say we're a pro Jags podcast. So if anybody's listening,
We were rooting for the
Jags,
Jags,
we love the
and we were
Jags.
pretty
love the comeback
disappointed.
Story. Worst team last year, they make the playoffs this year. I love it. I love it. We love Trevor. We love Etienne. That team's dope. So I was trying to come up with like an analogy too while you were talking. Because I feel like I didn't give like the best way of describing what I meant by like taking opportunity and things like that.
Yeah.
But something I was thinking about was like a relationship, right? Or like meeting someone special. Is like, I don't know if you've ever had this where like you met someone but you felt like it just wasn't like you weren't ready for it and kind of came out of nowhere. But like for example, like
Are you gonna pop that one question, the $1 million question?
what's the $1 million question?
Maybe I'm getting into it too quick. Is it more about the right person or the right time?
Yes, okay, I was getting there, bro. I was getting
my
there.
bad.
You
Okay.
dropped it too quick.
Dropped it. Okay, my
friend.
bad.
You're
My
good.
bad.
No, this is something. No. So this is something we were talking about earlier. But I think this goes along with this. Like, basically, bro. I was trying to transition.
Bro, my bad.
I had it, bro. I had it, but it's all good.
No, bro,
So,
you were killing it, bro. You're
Well,
killing
hear
it.
me
Sorry.
out. You're
I
good, bro. I'm
totally
playing.
ruined your vibe. My bad.
No, you're good, bro. I'm completely playing right now. Okay, so
Bro, I'm gonna cut this out of the podcast.
nah, bro, don't cut this out. Come on, this is
Let's go.
authentic. This is authentic right here. So something I was thinking about was like, sometimes people will be like, "Oh, I really want to meet someone special," right? Or generally speaking, like, I mean, I've had my phases where I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going single for a while and I'm running solo," and I'm like not trying to think about that because I just need to like focus on myself and I need to focus on like my goals right now, right? But generally speaking, usually if people are single, they're like they're hoping to meet someone special. But I think like a lot of people are doing that, but they're not like taking active steps towards like being ready for meeting that person, right? So they might not be like working on themselves and making sure they're like healthy and mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, and like so that when they meet that person, they're like the best version of themselves and they're ready for that opportunity, right? Like if you're struggling with a lot of things in your life and you're not in the healthiest place mentally and emotionally, and you meet the right person or you meet like a special person, are you really ready for that? Like chances are things aren't going to work out, right? Because you just don't have like the emotional capacity or like availability to like be 100% for that person. But yes, this does go along with that question. You want to start, man? I'm really curious what you think about this because this is a weird one. Like this is kind of tough. Like, do you think that in relationships, what matters is meeting the right person, or is it meeting someone at the right time?
Bro, we both know the answer to this question.
Do we? Do we both?
It's the timing, bro.
Really?
It can be, you can meet the right person, like that person in your dreams that you're probably never gonna meet. You can meet that person at the wrong time, and they're the wrong person. I saw a thing where it said, meeting the right person at the wrong time means they're the wrong person. Something like that.
Ooh, shit. Okay. Bars.
So it's all about timing, bro. And even if you meet someone that's like not, no one meets the person that like they create in their head. But even if you just need to meet someone who's emotionally available, or I don't like, you're kind of on the same level as, like, you both want the same goals, you're both the same I don't want to say same emotional maturity, but but you know what I mean. So just like you have to like just meet the timing has to be correct where like you both your goals, your lifestyle, whatever, just line up so that you can move forward together into the future and build off of like each other as a couple, but also build the other person up as an individual. Because like as you mentioned, if you meet the right person, but you don't have the emotional space or the mental space, or too much is going on, you're not going to be able to show up completely as your 100% like perfect, authentic self to that person. So honestly, they might be you're just going to show up as the wrong person also. Like you're going to be the wrong person also. You know what I mean? It's not just that they have to be the right person or the right timing. You also have to be the right person at the right timing. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So yeah, so it's just like it's definitely about timing, and I've learned that the hard way. I don't know if you have, but yeah, man, you definitely have to work on yourself first, and then the timing has to be right also. So
I
that's me.
disagree.
That's me. I don't know if
I
I don't know.
disagree, bro. I don't think it's that obvious.
Hold up. Let's rewind now. What? Let's rewind 10 seconds ago.
Am I crazy?
What
Am I
did he just
interpreting this
say?
question wrong? I don't know. Okay, so I don't know if this is a cop-out answer, and I don't know if I'm interpreting the question wrong.
I'm shocked.
But hold up, bro. Let me explain a little bit. Okay. So I think timing matters, right? But I think, okay, how would I explain this? So
bro, there is
no, hear me out.
Okay. I'm gonna
Hear me out, bro. Let me get this in. So ultimately, at the end of the day, a person has to be the right person in my mind. I hate the idea of like people making things work when they're not like your person. Like if I'm gonna fall in love, I want to fall like madly in love. I want to like have that person be like my person, my forever person. So I feel like the person matters a lot, right? Like the right person. But I think the timing is like determines whether or not it works out. So like if it's the right time in my life and I meet someone, but they're not the person, it's still not going to work out, right? So I think both of them matter, but I think that the right person is like the prerequisite and the right time is the determining factor. I don't know if that makes sense.
What makes the right person?
I mean, I think it depends on an individual, right? Like having the same values. Like I think everybody has different ideas of what a successful relationship is, right? But for me personally, like I need someone who I can communicate with really well, who's like okay with having uncomfortable conversations. I need someone who I have great emotional, physical chemistry with, spiritual chemistry with. Like there's a bunch of different factors, right? Bro, the other answer is I don't know. Like I don't know what makes the right person, but when I meet them, I'm sure I will. But I think there's like certain qualities people look for in a relationship, right? So you're talking about finding a person who you line up with in that way, and then on top of that, it being the right time. So it might be a little bit of cop out. I think they're both really important, but I think it's like 60% right person, 40% right time. Or I'm tripping. I don't know.
I think it's interchangeable, where it's like, if it's the right person, they'll show up at the right time, and vice versa. At the right time, the right person.
You're on some soulmate shit. You're on some soulmate shit, bro. If it's the right time, the right person will show up. That's some soulmate shit.
But
I like it. It's romantic.
No, I'm not trying to make it romantic. I'm just saying that like they're interchangeable, and like, you know what I mean? Like that quote that I dropped where it's like, if you meet the right person at the wrong time, it's the wrong person. I mean, it makes sense. So it's just like the same thing where it's like both things, like you said, one is, I forgot what you said. You said like the timing determines it, but like the right person is like the main part. I forgot what you said. Correct me if you remember. But so I mean, it's not some soulmate shit.
So the prerequisite is the right person. The right person is the prerequisite, and the right time is the determining factor.
That was it. So that's why I'm just saying, like you kind of have both with even just one. If it's the right time and you meet a dope person, then they might be the right person, and vice versa. What did I say? If you meet the right person at the right time, then you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's like interchangeable.
Well, I see what you're saying, but I think it's like, no offense, but I think it's like a little bit like, it's a little bit like like for example, like I think it's like super romantic, that thought process. Like, oh, when it's the right time, I'll meet the right person, right? But wouldn't you agree that it's completely possible that in your past, when you weren't ready for a relationship, you met someone that could have been your person. Like it could have been someone you could have like had a long-term, successful, lifelong relationship with. Like if I'm looking at my past, there's times I met someone where I'm like, oh, that person was actually a really incredible person, but I was just emotionally unavailable and not in the right space for a relationship. Like I've had people I've met who I'm like, looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe that person could have been something way more. Like, don't you think it's possible that at the wrong time you met the right person once and you just don't know because it never worked out that way?
Well, I've thought of that before, and I used to think that, but then it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think, yeah. I mean, I've thought of that too. And so I totally 100% see where you're coming. But like, as I like keep growing and maybe revisiting the situation, sometimes I'm like, maybe it could have been a lot better and a lot healthier, but I don't know if it would still be the right person. You know what I mean?
On, bro. Like you're telling me that when you're not ready, you got some kind of barrier around you. There's like a force field where anybody who is the right person, they like just can't get into your life.
They can get into your life, but it's gonna nosedive.
It's okay, the wrong. So that's what I'm saying. They could have been the right person at the wrong time.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I agree with you on that, bro.
But you just said if you meet the right person at the wrong time, they weren't the right person.
Yeah, but that makes sense too. Like I'm not saying
oh my god,
bro. Listen, it makes sense. They could have the potential to be the right person, but if it's at the wrong time, it's not going to work out, which means they're the wrong person.
So we're basically both just saying the same shit in different ways.
That's what I've been trying to say. That's why I said they're interchangeable, bro. Like, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. We're saying the same shit, bro.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, I agree. I think basically what we're saying is you have to have both things, right? You have to have the right person and you have to have the right time. Otherwise, it's not going to work either way. Like if it's the right time and you meet the wrong person, it ain't working. If it's the right time, if it's the right person and the wrong time, it's not working either way. You have to have both things lining up, right? And maybe that's why it's so hard for a lot of people.
Exactly.
Having both of those things line up can be difficult.
A lot of times people have one of those things, and then because they have that one thing, they think that they're set or that they have the whole picture, but then they realize, but honestly, you can be blind to the other fact. Like when I've met, or I should say it this way, when I thought it was the time, like I was like, oh, this is my time, like to get into a relationship, and then I met this dope person, but then it like shattered. Now looking back, I was like, that was not the right time at all. You know what I mean? So just like you can be blind to that fact also. The same thing where it's like, and that's how people get manipulated in relationships, is like someone can present themselves as the right person, but they're a totally different person than what you think. You know what I mean? So anyways, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but
bro, yeah. Can I put you on the spot real quick?
Put me on the spot. We get uncomfortable on this fucking podcast.
I want to put you on the spot, bro. I feel like you gave me a kind of a BS answer earlier, or you kind of dodged it, bro. So let's hear this real quick. Okay. So before we got on the pod, Manny just randomly told me that. So he downloaded some dating apps yesterday and he deleted them today. He gave it a shot for one day. This boy had 24 hours.
Bro, not even a day. I had 12 hours, my guy.
Okay, so is it just the wrong time for you? Why'd you get rid of it? You just said,
the wrong time, bro. I'm 100. You don't understand, Huddy. I'm 100% in on myself, my guy. Like, I'm so fucking honed in on where I want to go and what I want. And I'm just so fucking happy doing my own thing right now and just building upon myself and my goals. Like, I don't need it. Like, I was there for 12 hours and I was like, cool. But then I realized it was like a distraction. It started becoming a distraction.
Is any part of it like fear or like worry about change? Is that any part of it? Or is it just completely like, I'm good, life's good, I don't want to fuck with anything right now? Is any part of it like fear? Like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there right now?
No, I think it was just the timing. Back to the timing part. It's not the time right now. Like, it's not even that, like, it's not the time right now. I also realized it was a distraction. It doesn't have to be dating. It can be anything. The moment I think something's a little bit of a distraction, I'll immediately swat it. And that's when the moment I started trickling that it was a distraction, I was like, it's gone. So I got rid of it. And I mean, also bandwidth, kind of have too much going on. So just like, I don't need that bandwidth taken up for something petty. Even if I did stay on it, like, I honestly just don't know what I was doing on it. So yeah, bro, just like, I'm just so focused on myself and honed in on what I want to do right now until I kind of get to that level, or at least feel more comfortable with the trajectory towards that level. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I'm good.
It's just
And I'm like,
very obvious to you right now that it's not the right time.
oh, it's plain as day, bro. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a bright, like, yeah, it's like a bright light is being shined on. It's so obvious to me. And like, I thought, because I haven't been on for a while, so like, I'll give it a shot. But like, even a few hours after downloading it, I was like, this is not the right move. So that's why, bro. I told you, bro. It has nothing to do with fear. Like, I genuinely,
you gave me the weakest response. It was like, I'm trying to grind. That was it, bro. Like, nothing else, which I believed you. I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, it's the wrong time. He's trying to like focus on himself. But it was like the most nonchalant, like usually when we talk, you give me like a long response about something when I ask something like that. But you were like, I'm trying to grind. I was like, damn, something's up. But I guess nothing's up. I thought something might be up though, so I thought I'd put you on the spot real quick.
There was nothing more to say. I mean, obviously I can go in depth like this. I'm trying to grind.
All right then. All right.
Like, I don't need to say, like, I'm just trying to grind, bro.
Bro, I appreciate you bringing me on the pod. I had a lot of fun, man.
I'm down. Why are you acting like this is your last time, bro?
Bro, I'm out. It was fun.
You're just as much as the pod as me, bro. There is no never get too comfortable without letting that guy.
So I'll see y'all later. There'll be a new second person on tomorrow. No,
we have me and Huddy did this business out in Pittsburgh, and we call it Grease City, and based off our experience out there, and you know, he's greasing right now.
I'm not greasing, bro. I'm playing. I'll be back here next week. Let's talk about the sports podcast real quick, man.
All right, y'all. Let me close this up. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. We'll be back. We're trying to do this every week. A podcast like this. We also got our sports podcast. If you're into sports, definitely check that out. But thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. It's Airhud, Baby Brit. Never get too comfortable. We out. Peace.
All right, peace.
I'm cutting that out. That was terrible, bro.
You want me to do it real quick, bro? Let me do it.
No, I just didn't like the last 3 seconds. But go ahead.
But you can cut mine in. Like, just use mine instead.
I'm down. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, real quick. I just want to let everybody know we're also doing a sports podcast. So our sports podcasts are going to release on Mondays, and our current podcast that we're filming right now is going to be released on Thursdays. Sports podcast, we're going to be talking NFL, we're going to be talking NBA, any big sports news coming up, and then obviously our standard NGT podcast is similar to what we're talking about right now. But if you guys are interested in sports podcast, check us out. It's NGTC Sports. We're on all the platforms. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we will see you twice a week, every week. Thank you guys.